I was 17 years old, 73 pounds, and climbing through a bathroom window in my wedding dress. My hands shook so bad I almost couldn't grip the frame. Downstairs, 200 people waited for me to walk down the aisle, but I knew the truth. That wasn't a wedding. It was a prison sentence. And the man waiting for me had already killed his first wife. Before we continue, please drop a comment if you've ever experienced something like this. We'd love to hear your story and subscribe to the channel to help us grow. My name is Ayanna Whitfield, and I'm 42 years old now. But back then, I was just a scared teenager who'd been starving herself for 3 years, trying to stop what my family called tradition. In my house, girls didn't go to college. Girls didn't have careers. Girls got married the summer they turned 18 to men my father chose. Men who could strengthen family ties. Men who could bring business connections. Men who were always older, always controlling, always dangerous. I watched it happen to my cousin Jasmine when I was 14. She was beautiful, smart, had a full scholarship to Spelman College. She turned 16 on a Tuesday. By Friday, my uncle had her engaged to a 40-year-old deacon from another church. She cried for weeks. Nobody listened. 6 months later, she was married. A year after that, I saw bruises on her arms at a family cookout. She tried to hide them. I pretended not to notice because that's what we were taught to do. That's when I made my decision. If I never hit puberty, they couldn't marry me off. So I stopped eating. Not all at once, just gradually. Skipping breakfast, picking at lunch, pushing food around at dinner. My mama noticed, but she thought I was just being vain, wanting to be skinny like the girls in magazines. She had no idea I was trying to save my life. It worked for a while. I stayed small, looked 12 when I was 15. My period never came. My body stayed flat and childlike. I thought maybe I'd bought myself some time. Maybe I could finish high school. Maybe I could run away. Maybe I could find a different life. But that wasn't even the worst part. The summer I turned 17, everything changed. My father came home from church with that look on his face. The same look Uncle Vernon had before Jasmine's engagement. He sat me down at the kitchen table. My mama stood behind him with her hands folded. She wouldn't look at me. "Ayanna," Daddy said. His voice was calm. Too calm. "You've been blessed with a proposal. Brother Elijah Thornton has asked for your hand in marriage. It's a great honor for this family." My stomach dropped. Elijah Thornton. I knew that name. Everyone in our community knew that name. He was 48 years old, owned 3 car dealerships, sat on the church board, donated money to politicians, and his wife died 2 years ago in what everyone called a tragic accident. She fell down the stairs, broke her neck. The police investigated for 2 days and closed the case. But I'd heard the whispers. The women at church talked when they thought no one was listening. Nia Thornton didn't fall. She was pushed. She'd tried to leave him 3 times. Each time he found her, brought her back, made her apologize to the congregation for being a disobedient wife. The last time, she ended up dead. "I'm 17, I said. My voice came out small, weak. "You'll be 18 in 3 months, Daddy replied. "The wedding will be the day after your birthday. Everything's already arranged." 3 months. I had 3 months to figure out how to survive. I tried everything. I begged, I cried, I reasoned. I showed my mama articles about forced marriage being illegal. She tore them up. Said I was being influenced by the outside world. Said our traditions kept our community strong. Said Elijah was a good man who would provide for me. Said I should be grateful. I went to my pastor. Reverend Freeman listened with kind eyes and then told me to honor my father and mother. Said marriage was a sacred covenant. Said young women today didn't understand submission. He called my father right in front of me. I thought I knew the truth about what I was facing. I had no idea. At school, I was falling apart. I'd already been thin, but now I was skeletal. My teachers noticed. The school nurse called me in twice. I lied. Said I was fine. Said I was just stressed about college applications. They believed me because they wanted to, because the alternative was too complicated. But Ms. Rochelle Bryant didn't believe me. Ms. Bryant taught 11th grade English. She was young for a teacher, only 26, with natural hair she wore in different styles every week and a way of actually listening when students talked. She'd grown up in the South too, recognized the signs of something dark happening behind closed doors. She kept me after class one day in October, 2 months before my 18th birthday, 6 weeks before the wedding. "Ayanna," she said gently, "what's really going on?" I meant to lie. I'd practiced the lie 100 times. But when I opened my mouth, the truth came pouring out. Everything. The forced marriage tradition, Jasmine's bruises, Elijah's dead wife, my father's arrangements. The date circled on the calendar like a death sentence. Ms. Bryant's face went hard. "That's not legal. You know that, right? Forced marriage is illegal in the United States." "My family doesn't care about that," I whispered. "They say it's our culture, our tradition. They say American law doesn't apply to family matters." "They're wrong." Ms. Bryant pulled out her phone, made a call right there. When she hung up, she looked at me with fierce eyes. "I know a lawyer, Camille Harris. She does family law. She'll help you." That's when I started planning my escape. What happened next changed everything. Attorney Camille Harris met with me 3 times in secret. Ms. Bryant would pick me up from school, drive me to Camille's office, and bring me back before my parents got suspicious. Camille explained my rights, explained emancipation, explained protective orders, explained that what my family was doing wasn't just wrong, it was criminal. "The challenge," Camille said during our second meeting, "is that you're still a minor, and your parents have legal custody. We need to move carefully." "I turn 18 December 15th, I said. "The wedding is December 16th. Camille and Ms. Bryant exchanged looks. "Then we move on the 15th, Camille decided. "The moment you turn 18, you're a legal adult. They can't force you to do anything. But we need to get you somewhere safe first." The plan was simple. On December 15th, Ms. Bryant would pick me up from school like normal. Instead of taking me home, she'd take me to a safe house. At midnight, when I turned 18, Camille would file an emergency protective order against my family and Elijah. By the time they figured out what happened, I'd be untouchable. But my family figured it out first. A week before my birthday, my father sat me down again. This time, he wasn't calm. He was furious. "I've been hearing things," he said. "Hearing you've been talking to people, saying lies about this family, about brother Elijah." My blood went cold. Someone had talked. Someone had told him. "I don't know what you mean," I said. He slammed his hand on the table. "Don't lie to me, girl. You think I don't have eyes in this community? You think people don't tell me when my own daughter is disrespecting me?" Mama stood in the corner crying quietly. "The wedding has been moved up," Daddy continued. "Saturday morning, 3 days from now. And until then, you're not leaving this house. No school, no phone, no nothing." They locked me in my room. Literally locked it. Put a bolt on the outside of my door. Brought me meals on a tray. My window had bars on it. Daddy had installed them years ago for safety. I was trapped. Saturday morning came too fast. Mama unlocked my door at 6 a.m., brought in the wedding dress, white lace, long sleeves, high neck. It looked like something from a funeral. "Put it on," she said softly. "Don't make this harder than it has to be." I put it on. My hands were shaking. The dress hung off my skeletal frame like a shroud. 73 pounds of terror wrapped in white lace. Downstairs I could hear people arriving. Family members, church members, Elijah's business associates. 200 people gathering to watch a child be sold to a predator. Mama did my hair, put flowers in it, applied makeup to try to hide how sick I looked. The whole time she hummed hymns under her breath, Like this was normal. Like this was beautiful. "You'll learn to love him," she whispered. "Just like I learned to love your father." That's when I realized the truth. This had happened to her too. This cycle of forced marriage and stolen futures had been going on for generations, and nobody had ever escaped. Until now. "I need to use the bathroom," I said. Mama hesitated, then nodded. 5 minutes. The ceremony starts at 8. She walked me to the bathroom, stood outside the door, but she didn't come in. The bathroom had a window, small, high up, but no bars. I locked the door, climbed onto the toilet, pushed the window open. It was tight, so tight. But I was 73 pounds. I could fit through spaces normal people couldn't. I squeezed through that window like my life depended on it. Because it did. The dress got caught, tore. I didn't care. I dropped into the bushes below, scrambled to my feet, and I ran. I ran barefoot down the street in a torn wedding dress at 7:30 in the morning. Neighbors stared. Cars slowed down. I didn't stop. I ran 6 blocks to the corner store, used the payphone, called the number Ms. Bryant had made me memorize. She answered on the first ring. "Ayanna?" "I'm out," I gasped. "I'm out, but they're going to come looking for me. Please, please help me." "Where are you?" I told her. "Stay there. I'm 10 minutes away. Ayanna." Her voice cracked. "You did it. You got out." Those were the longest 10 minutes of my life. Every car that passed, I thought was my father. Every person who walked by, I thought would grab me, drag me back, lock me up forever. But then Ms. Bryant's Honda pulled up. She jumped out, wrapped me in a blanket, put me in her car. "We're going to the police station," she said. "Camille's meeting us there." That's when I heard the sirens behind us. Not police sirens. My father had called 911, told them his mentally ill daughter had escaped, said I was dangerous, said I needed to be brought back home immediately for my own safety. The police car pulled us over. 2 officers got out, approached Ms. Bryant's window. "Ma'am," the officer said, "we need you to step out of the vehicle, and we need the girl in the back seat to come with us. Her family is very worried about her." Ms. Bryant looked at me in the rearview mirror. Her eyes said everything. This wasn't over. They were going to take me back, and this time, there would be no escape. Ms. Bryant didn't move. She kept her hands on the steering wheel and her eyes forward. "Officer," she said calmly, "I'm Rochelle Bryant. I'm a teacher at Douglas High School. This young woman is my student, and she's asked me for help. I'm taking her to meet with her attorney." The officer's expression hardened. "Ma'am, the girl's family says she's mentally unstable. They have legal custody. We need to return her home for a psychiatric evaluation." "She's 17 years old," Ms. Bryant continued. "In 3 days she'll be 18, and she's fleeing a forced marriage. That's a federal crime." The second officer stepped forward, older, more skeptical. "That's a serious accusation. Do you have proof?" That's when a silver Lexus pulled up behind the police car. Camille Harris stepped out in a sharp navy suit, carrying a briefcase. She walked straight to the officers with the kind of confidence that comes from knowing the law inside and out. "Good morning, officers. I'm Camille Harris, attorney at law. This young woman is my client. Any questions you have can be directed to me." The first officer looked uncertain. "Her family filed a missing persons report. They're saying she's having a mental health crisis." Camille pulled documents from her briefcase. "This is a sworn affidavit from my client detailing the forced marriage arrangement. This is a medical report from her school nurse documenting signs of severe stress and malnutrition. And this," she handed over another paper, "is a temporary protective order I filed this morning requesting an emergency hearing. My client has the right to speak with an attorney before being returned to anyone." The officers exchanged glances. The older one radioed dispatch. After a tense 2 minutes, he nodded. "All right, but we're documenting this, and Child Protective Services will be notified." "Please do," Camille said. "In fact, I insist on it." The officers got back in their car, drove away slowly, reluctantly. I realized I'd been holding my breath the entire time. I let it out in a shaky sob. "You're safe," Camille said, opening the back door. "For now, but we need to move fast." Ms. Bryant drove us to a women's shelter on the other side of town. The kind of place with security cameras and locked doors and staff trained to deal with domestic violence cases. They gave me real clothes to replace the torn wedding dress. Fed me soup because my stomach couldn't handle solid food anymore. Showed me to a small room with a bed and a window with no bars. I sat on that bed and cried for an hour straight. Not sad tears, relief tears, freedom tears. I can't believe I'm still alive tears. But that wasn't even the worst part. My phone, the one my parents had taken, started blowing up with messages. The shelter staff had confiscated it from my father when he showed up demanding to see me. They gave it to Camille as evidence. She showed me some of the messages. From my father, "You have shamed this family. You are dead to us." From my uncle, "Jezebel spirit. You need deliverance." From church members I'd known my whole life, praying for you to come to your senses. But the ones from Elijah Thornton were different, darker. "You can't hide forever. I know where you are. You made a commitment. I don't let go of what's mine." Camille screenshot everything. "This is good. Threatening messages strengthen our protective order case. The hearing is scheduled for Monday morning." Monday. 2 days away. 2 days to prepare for a legal battle against my entire family. "What if I lose?" I asked. Camille sat down next to me. "Ayana, you're about to turn 18. You're a legal adult. They can't force you to marry anyone. The question isn't whether you'll lose. The question is how much damage they'll try to do before they accept that." She was right. The damage started immediately. My father called Ms. Bryant's school, demanded she be fired for kidnapping. The principal stood by her, but the pressure was intense. Parents from the church started pulling their kids from her classes. The school board launched an investigation. Elijah Thornton's lawyers sent a cease and desist letter claiming I'd defamed him, threatened to sue Camille, Ms. Bryant, and the shelter for interference with family matters. My mother showed up at the shelter crying, begging me to come home, saying Elijah had agreed to wait, saying we could do premarital counseling, saying I was breaking her heart. I didn't see her. I couldn't, because seeing her would mean remembering that she'd let this happen. That she'd locked me in a room and put me in a wedding dress and walked me toward a monster. That she'd chosen tradition over her own daughter. Reverend Freeman gave a sermon that Sunday about rebellious children and the importance of honoring your parents. Half the congregation knew he was talking about me. The other half figured it out when my father stood up and said Amen 15 times. What I said was bad, but what I learned next was worse. Camille had been investigating Elijah's background, digging into his first wife's death. She found something the police had missed. "Nia Thornton didn't just fall down those stairs," Camille said, showing me a medical examiner's report she'd obtained through a legal request. She had defensive wounds on her hands, bruising consistent with being grabbed. And here's the thing, the police report says Elijah was at work when it happened. But his work alibis came from employees at his own dealership, people who depend on him for their jobs. "So he killed her," I said flatly. "I can't prove that in court. Not enough evidence. But I can establish a pattern of domestic violence that makes him unsuitable for any kind of relationship with you." She pulled out more documents. Police reports from Nia's previous attempts to leave. Hospital records showing she'd been treated for a broken wrist, cracked ribs, and a concussion over their 5-year marriage. Testimony from neighbors who'd heard screaming. "How did nobody stop this?" I whispered. "Same reason nobody stopped what was happening to you," Camille said quietly. "Money. Power. Community pressure. The system failing women who need it most." I thought about Jasmine, my cousin who'd disappeared into a marriage at 16. I hadn't seen her in over a year. Last I'd heard, she'd moved across the country. Nobody talked about her anymore, like she'd been erased. "I want to find Jasmine," I said suddenly. "My cousin. She went through this. She might help." Camille nodded. "Give me her information. I'll track her down." The hearing was set for 9 a.m. Monday morning, December 18th. 3 days after my 18th birthday. 3 days after I was supposed to be Mrs. Elijah Thornton. I turned 18 at the shelter. Ms. Bryant brought me a cupcake with a single candle. Camille gave me a card that said "Happy Birthday" on the front and had a copy of my emancipation papers inside. "You're free," Camille said. "Legally, officially. Free." But I didn't feel free. I felt hunted. That night, someone threw a brick through Miss Bryant's car window, left a note that said, "Child stealer." The police took a report but said there wasn't much they could do without witnesses. The shelter got 3 threatening phone calls. Anonymous voices saying they knew where I was, saying I couldn't hide, saying God would judge me. Camille hired private security, a woman named Denise who stood 6 feet tall and looked like she could break a man in half. She escorted me everywhere, even to the bathroom. "Is this my life now?" I asked Camille. "Looking over my shoulder forever?" "Not forever," Camille promised. "Just until we make it clear that you're untouchable. That's what Monday's hearing is about. Getting a permanent protective order, making it illegal for any of them to contact you. Setting boundaries with teeth." Monday morning arrived cold and gray. I dressed in clothes the shelter had provided, simple black pants and a blue sweater. Nothing flashy, nothing that would make me look like a rebellious teenager. Camille coached me on the drive over. "The judge will ask you questions. Answer honestly. Stay calm. Don't let them rattle you. Your father's lawyer is going to try to paint you as mentally unstable, as confused, as influenced by outsiders who don't understand your culture." "What do I say?" "You tell the truth. You tell her you were being forced into a marriage with a violent man. You tell her you feared for your life. You tell her that choosing freedom doesn't make you mentally ill." We walked into the courthouse at 8:45. My father was already there. My mother, my uncles, my aunts. Elijah Thornton in an expensive suit. Reverend Freeman. 30 people from our church community. They stared at me like I was a stranger, like I was something diseased. I sat next to Camille at the petitioner's table, tried to breathe, tried to remember that I had rights, that the law was on my side. Judge Dorothy Clark entered at 9 sharp. Black woman, late 60s, stern face. She looked at me over her reading glasses with an expression I couldn't read. "This is a hearing on an emergency protective order," she began. "Petitioner is Ayanna Whitfield. Respondents are Vernon Whitfield, Gloria Whitfield, and Elijah Thornton. Who's representing the respondents?" A man in a gray suit stood up. "Thomas Wellington, Your Honor. I represent all 3 respondents." Of course they'd hired a lawyer. Probably the most expensive one Elijah could buy. "Ms. Harris," Judge Clark said, "present your case." Camille stood, laid out everything, the forced marriage tradition, Nia Thornton's death, the threatening messages, my father locking me in my room, the wedding I'd escaped through a bathroom window. Then Wellington stood up, and that's when everything went sideways. "Your Honor, with all respect to Ms. Harris, this case is about a troubled young woman having a mental health crisis. Ayanna Whitfield has a documented eating disorder. She's been hospitalized twice for malnutrition. She has a history of making up dramatic stories for attention." My stomach dropped. Hospitalized? I'd never been hospitalized. Camille shot to her feet. "Objection. My client has no history of hospitalization. Where is this information coming from?" Wellington pulled out papers, medical records, with my name on them, from a psychiatric facility I'd never been to. "These records," Wellington said smoothly, "show that Miss Whitfield was treated for anorexia nervosa with psychotic features. She's been having delusions, paranoid thinking. Her parents were trying to get her help when she fled." I looked at Camille in panic. Those records were fake. They had to be fake. But they looked real. Official letterhead, doctor's signatures, dates, and timestamps. Your Honor, Wellington continued, the Whitfield family is not trying to force their daughter into marriage. They're trying to get her the mental health treatment she desperately needs, and these outside parties, he gestured at Camille and Ms. Bryant in the gallery, have interfered with that treatment. They've convinced a sick girl that her loving family is the enemy. Judge Clark looked at me, really looked at me, and I saw doubt in her eyes. This wasn't a hearing anymore. It was a trap, and I was about to lose everything. I watched Judge Clark study those fake medical records. My entire future hung in the balance. Everything I'd fought for was slipping away because my family had bought lies and wrapped them in official-looking paper. Camille's voice cut through the silence. Your Honor, I request a 15-minute recess to examine these records. They were not provided during discovery. This is the first time we're seeing them. Judge Clark nodded slowly. 15 minutes, both counsel in my chambers. Now. The courtroom emptied except for me, Denise the security guard, and 30 people from my old community staring daggers into my back. I kept my eyes forward, didn't turn around, couldn't let them see me scared. Ms. Bryant squeezed my shoulder as she walked past. Hold on, she whispered. Just hold on. The minutes crawled. I counted them. 1, 2, 3. Each second felt like drowning. At minute 12, the chamber doors opened. Camille came out first. Her face was unreadable. Then Wellington. He looked smug. Too smug. Judge Clark returned to the bench. We have a problem with these medical records. Ms. Harris has identified several inconsistencies that need further investigation. However, she looked directly at me. The court takes allegations of mental health crises seriously. I cannot issue a protective order based solely on claims of forced marriage when there's contradicting documentation suggesting the petitioner may not be perceiving reality accurately. My heart stopped. Therefore, Judge Clark continued, I'm ordering an independent psychiatric evaluation. Until that evaluation is complete, I'm issuing a temporary order. The respondents are to maintain a distance of 500 feet from the petitioner. No contact, no communication. The hearing will reconvene in 2 weeks with the evaluation results. Wellington stood. Your Honor, the family requests that Miss Whitfield be placed in their custody during this period, for her own safety. Absolutely not, Judge Clark said sharply. She's 18, a legal adult. She'll remain where she is. Court adjourned. The gavel came down. I'd won, sort of. For 2 weeks. But what happened next was worse than I could have imagined. My father stood up in the courtroom, faced the entire congregation that had come to support him, and he said the words that would change everything. Ayanna Whitfield is no longer my daughter. She has chosen the world over her family. She has rejected God. She has brought shame on the Whitfield name. From this day forward, she is dead to us. We will not speak her name. We will not acknowledge her existence. She is erased. My mother sobbed, but she didn't protest. She just nodded and followed him out. One by one, my aunts and uncles filed past me, eyes forward, like I was invisible, like I'd already vanished. Elijah Thornton was the last to leave. He paused at my table, leaned down close enough that only I could hear. You think you won, he whispered. You think you're safe, but I'm a patient man, Ayanna, and I always get what I want. Then he walked out like he'd said nothing at all. Camille grabbed my arm. We're leaving, now. The psychiatric evaluation was scheduled for the following Monday. 5 days away. 5 days of waiting to see if a doctor would believe me or believe the fake records. What if the evaluator sides with them? I asked Camille in her office that afternoon. Then we appeal, we fight, we bring in our own experts. She paused. But I'm working on something else. Something that might make all of this irrelevant. What? I found Jasmine. My cousin. The one who'd been married off at 16. The one nobody talked about anymore. She's in Seattle, Camille continued. Divorced, working as a paralegal. And when I told her what was happening to you, she said she'd testify. She's flying in tomorrow. Hope flickered in my chest. Real hope. Jasmine arrived Tuesday evening. I almost didn't recognize her. She'd cut her hair short, had a scar above her left eyebrow, looked older than 21, looked like someone who'd survived a war. We sat in the shelter's common room, stared at each other for a long moment. I'm sorry, she said finally. I'm sorry I didn't help you when it was happening to me. I'm sorry I just disappeared. You were surviving, I said. I was a coward. Tears ran down her face. I let them break me. And then I ran so far away, I convinced myself it wasn't my problem anymore. But when Camille called and told me what they were doing to you, the same thing they did to me, I knew I had to come back. She told me her story. The forced marriage to Deacon Sterling. The abuse that started on their wedding night. The 3 years of hell before she finally escaped with nothing but the clothes on her back. The family disowning her for leaving her husband. The years of therapy to put herself back together. But here's what they don't know, Jasmine said. I kept records, photos of my bruises, recordings of their conversations planning the marriage, letters from church leaders approving it. Everything. I was too scared to use them when it was happening to me. But I can use them now. For you. Camille's eyes lit up. That's evidence of a pattern, of a systematic practice. That destroys their claim this is just about one girl having mental health issues. The next few days were a blur of preparation. Camille filed motions, gathered witnesses, built a case that was bigger than just me. A case about an entire community enabling forced marriage and calling it tradition. The psychiatric evaluator came to the shelter on Monday. Dr. Patricia Moore, calm, professional, spent 3 hours talking to me, asked about my eating disorder, my family, my fears, my escape. I told her everything, the truth, no exaggeration, no drama, just the facts of what my life had been. At the end, she closed her notebook and looked at me with kind eyes. Ayana, she said, you don't have psychotic features. You don't have delusions. You have PTSD from prolonged trauma. There's a significant difference. And those medical records claiming otherwise? They're fraudulent. I checked with the facility they supposedly came from. You've never been a patient there. I started crying. Couldn't help it. I'm recommending the protective order be granted permanently, Dr. Moore continued. And I'm reporting the fraudulent records to the medical board and the police. Someone committed a serious crime trying to gaslight you. The reconvened hearing was set for Friday, December 29th, 2 weeks after my birthday, 2 weeks after I was supposed to be married. This time, Camille had more ammunition. Dr. Moore's evaluation, Jasmine's testimony and records, a forensic document analyst who'd proven the medical records were faked. We walked into that courtroom ready for war. But we weren't ready for what actually happened. Judge Clark called the hearing to order. Camille stood to present our evidence. And that's when the courtroom doors opened. A woman walked in, mid-30s, thin, nervous, with a face I'd only seen in old church photos. Nia Thornton, Elijah's dead wife, who wasn't dead at all. The courtroom exploded in whispers. Elijah went white. Actually white, like he'd seen a ghost. Because he had. Judge Clark banged her gavel. Order! Who are you, ma'am? My name is Nia Thornton, the woman said. Her voice shook but held firm. I'm listed as deceased, but I'm very much alive, and I'm here to testify about the man who tried to kill me. Camille looked as shocked as everyone else. She hadn't known. Nobody had known. Nia walked to the witness stand, was sworn in, and then she told her story, how Elijah had beaten her for 5 years, How she'd tried to leave 3 times. How the final time he'd pushed her down the stairs and left her for dead. How she'd woken up in the hospital with a broken neck and been told she'd never walk again. How a sympathetic nurse had helped her fake her death. Had put someone else's name on her death certificate. Had smuggled her out of the hospital and into a domestic violence program that specialized in helping women disappear. "I've been in hiding for 2 years," Nia said. "Living under a different name. Too scared to come forward because Elijah has money and connections, and I thought nobody would believe me." She looked at me. "But when I heard he was trying to marry another girl, a child, I couldn't stay silent anymore. I couldn't let him do to her what he did to me." "How did you hear about this case?" Judge Clark asked. "I still have friends in the community. Someone reached out, told me what was happening. I knew I had to come forward." Wellington tried to object, tried to discredit her, tried to claim she was lying. But Nia had medical records, real ones, photos of her injuries, the fake death certificate, testimony from the nurse who'd helped her escape. And then Camille dropped the final bomb. "Your Honor, we've also discovered that the fraudulent psychiatric records submitted in the initial hearing were created by a doctor who happens to be on Elijah Thornton's payroll. Dr. Marcus Chen has been paid over $50,000 by Mr. Thornton in the past year. We have the bank records." I thought I knew the truth about my family's betrayal, but there was one more layer I hadn't seen coming. Judge Clark's face was stone. "Mr. Thornton, stand up." Elijah stood, but the confidence was gone. He looked cornered. "You fabricated medical records to discredit a young woman fighting for her freedom," Judge Clark said. Her voice was ice. "You hired a doctor to lie under oath. You attempted to use the legal system to force an 18-year-old into marriage with a documented history of domestic violence. Do you have anything to say?" Elijah said nothing. "Bailiff," Judge Clark ordered. "Detain Mr. Thornton. I'm holding him in contempt and referring this case to the district attorney for criminal investigation." 2 officers moved forward, handcuffed Elijah right there in the courtroom, his expensive suit, his polished shoes, his carefully built reputation, all of it crumbling. My father stood up. "Your Honor, our family had no knowledge—" "Sit down, Mr. Whitfield," Judge Clark snapped. "You locked your daughter in a room and tried to force her into marriage. The only reason you're not in handcuffs is because she's 18 now and I can't charge you retroactively for what you did when she was 17. But don't test me." He sat. Judge Clark turned to me. "Miss Whitfield, I'm granting a permanent protective order against Elijah Thornton, Vernon Whitfield, and Gloria Whitfield. 500 feet. No contact. No communication. Violation results in immediate arrest. Furthermore, I'm recommending the district attorney investigate the broader practice of forced marriage in your former community. This ends now." The gavel came down. I'd won. But I didn't feel victorious. I felt empty, because I'd lost my entire family, my community, everyone I'd ever known. They'd erased me, disowned me, chosen tradition over truth. The cost of freedom was everything. Camille drove me back to the shelter. Mr. Bryant was waiting with Jasmine and Denise. They'd become my new family, the people who'd stood by me when my blood relatives wouldn't. "What happens now?" I asked. "Now you live," Camille said simply. "You finish high school, you go to college, you build the life they tried to steal from you." I did all of that, got my GED, went to community college, transferred to a university, got a degree in social work. But that wasn't the end of the story. 2 years after the hearing, I started getting messages, anonymous at first, then more direct, from girls in my old community, girls who were being prepared for forced marriages, girls who'd heard whispers about the one who got away. They asked for help, for advice, for hope. I gave them something better. I created a network, underground, quiet. A way for at-risk girls to access legal information without their families knowing. Hidden resources, emergency contacts, escape plans. Everything I wished I'd had when I was 14 and watching Jasmine disappear into a marriage. I printed guides and hid them in library books at the community center. Created a secret email account where girls could reach out safely. Connected them with lawyers like Camille and teachers like Ms. Bryant. Over the years, I helped 17 girls escape. 17 lives that might have been destroyed by tradition. The community never acknowledged what they'd done was wrong. Never apologized. Never changed their official stance. But quietly, slowly, the forced marriages stopped. Because enough girls had vanished. Enough families had been publicly shamed. Enough people had gone to jail. Change didn't come through apologies. It came through consequences. I'm 42 now. I run a non-profit that helps young women escape forced marriages across the country. Camille is on my board. Ms. Bryant volunteers. Jasmine works as our legal coordinator. Nia speaks at our fundraisers about survival and resilience. My parents are still alive. Still in the same house. Still going to the same church. We've never spoken again. Not once in 25 years. Sometimes I drive past the old neighborhood and wonder if they ever think about me, if they ever regret what they did. But I don't need their regret. I don't need their apology. I needed my freedom, and I took it. The scar above my hip where I scraped against the bathroom window frame reminds me every day of what that freedom cost, and what it was worth. Some battles you win in court. Some battles you win by surviving, and some battles you win by making sure the next girl doesn't have to fight alone. That's the tradition I choose to pass down. Thanks for listening to this story. If it touched your heart, please leave a like and subscribe. Have you experienced something similar? Share your story in the comments below.